The Great Pyramid of Giza is not just a tomb but a machine aligned with an invisible power. For centuries, whispers have suggested ancient builders possessed a forgotten science, a method to align their greatest monuments with the very magnetic pulse of our planet. This is the lost science of aligning monuments with Earth's magnetic fields. By the end of this exploration, you will see the ancient world through a completely new lens, one where stone, sky, and planetary energy were intimately connected. We will investigate how entire temples were oriented not just to the stars, but to hidden forces within the Earth itself, and we will ask what catastrophic event may have shattered this knowledge. What does it mean for a civilization to build its prayers directly into the bedrock of the planet? A compass needle is a tiny piece of magnetized metal, yet it holds a secret dialogue with the entire planet. It points not to a star or a mountain, but to an invisible force field that wraps around the Earth like a colossal, intangible shield. This is geomagnetism, a phenomenon born from the churning of molten iron in our planet's core. For us, it guides hikers and sailors, but a compelling body of research suggests that for ancient architects, this magnetic field was a blueprint. The hypothesis is audacious yet simple. Certain temples, pyramids, and stone circles were not merely aligned to the rising sun or a bright star. They were deliberately oriented to the Earth's magnetic poles or to powerful local magnetic anomalies in the ground beneath them. This is geomagnetic alignment, a concept that separates it from the more familiar idea of astronomical alignment. One is about connecting to the heavens, the other about syncing with the very heartbeat of the Earth. Think of it this way: Stonehenge is famously oriented to the summer solstice sunrise, a celestial event anyone could witness and mark. But what if a builder wanted to align a monument to something no one could see? Something that required sensing a force that passes silently through stone and flesh alike. That is the foundational mystery. Researchers like geophysicist John B. Carlson have lent scientific weight to this idea, studying artifacts from the Olmec civilization in ancient Mexico and finding evidence that they understood magnetic properties thousands of years ago. The tools for such detection remain a subject of intense speculation. Could lodestones, naturally magnetized pieces of iron ore, have been used? Were certain rocks or even water sources known to resonate with this hidden energy? The difference in intent is profound. An astronomical alignment marks a moment in time, a calendar date. A geomagnetic alignment, however, suggests a desire to tap into a perpetual, living energy of the place itself. At the Temple of the Sun in Teotihuacan, for instance, studies have noted unusual magnetic readings in the minerals used in its construction, hinting that the site was chosen or modified with this invisible landscape in mind. This pushes us to re-evaluate what we mean by ancient intelligence. It was not just about observing the sky, but about listening to the silent song of the Earth. To build in such harmony required a science that feels, to our modern minds, almost like a form of sacred geography. And if this science was so advanced, where did it go? The search for answers begins not with theories, but with stone. The proof is not in a dusty manuscript, but locked within the stone itself. Modern archaeologists sometimes arrive at a site with more than shovels and brushes. They bring magnetometers, devices that can detect the faintest whisper of a magnetic field. And when these instruments pass over certain ancient blocks, they do not read silence. They register a distinct, persistent hum, a magnetic signature that defies simple geological explanation. This is the first tangible evidence, the measurable anomaly that transforms speculation into a legitimate scientific inquiry. We are not talking about random traces of iron, but specific stones that seem to have been selected, shaped, or even purposefully magnetized. The late researcher Joseph Farrell, among others, pointed to the curious case of polarized granite in some megalithic structures, where the magnetic polarity of the stone is aligned in a specific, non-random direction. This parallels ancient Chinese knowledge of lodestones, naturally magnetized pieces of iron ore that were used to craft the earliest compasses centuries before their widespread use in navigation. To understand this, we need to look at the minerals involved. Certain rocks contain ferromagnetic materials like magnetite and hematite, which can, under the right conditions, retain a magnetic charge, almost like a stone recording a memory. The question is, was that memory written by a lightning strike, by the Earth's own field over eons, or by deliberate human action? Across the globe, reports of these anomalies surface. At the Rollright Stone Circle in England, some of the weathered limestone blocks show unusual magnetic properties. The colossal Grand Menhir Brisset in France, a single stone weighing hundreds of tons, is made of a local granite rich in magnetite. But one of the most compelling examples comes from the Olmec civilization of ancient Mexico. Archaeologists have uncovered beautifully polished bars and mirrors made of magnetic hematite. These were not crude lumps of ore, they were exquisite artifacts shaped and smoothed with immense skill. Some researchers, like geophysicist John B. Carlson, have proposed these were not merely decorative or status symbols. They could have been ritual objects used in ceremonies that engaged with the Earth's unseen forces, or even practical tools for sensing magnetic north, allowing for precise alignments long before the magnetic compass was invented. Why go to such extraordinary lengths to find and work these specific stones? The selection itself hints at an intentionality that transcends simple construction. It suggests the builders were not just stacking rocks, they were assembling a material with a specific, hidden property. The presence of these magnetic materials begins to paint a picture of a sophisticated understanding, one that viewed certain stones as conduits or markers within a larger, living cosmological framework. If they could sense this force in a handheld bar, what might they have been able to do with an entire temple aligned to it? That silent hum within the stone is only the first clue. The second piece of evidence is written in the very alignment of the walls themselves, a code that only makes sense when you realize the compass needle has not always pointed where it does today. True north is a fixed geographic point, the axis on which our planet spins, but magnetic north, the point your compass seeks, is a wanderer. It drifts sometimes slowly, sometimes in dramatic leaps across the polar landscape over centuries. This phenomenon is called polar wander, and it leaves a unique fingerprint in the archaeological record, a science known as archaeomagnetism. When ancient builders used clay or heated stones in a fire, the iron particles within those materials would align to the Earth's magnetic field at that exact moment, freezing the pole's position in time as the material cooled. Modern researchers can analyze that magnetic snapshot to date a site with remarkable accuracy, but they can also do something even more revealing. They can work backwards to see where magnetic north was located when a temple's foundation was laid. And this is where the architectural detective work becomes extraordinary. Certain ancient structures are not aligned to true north, nor to any obvious star or solstice point. Their orientation seems slightly off, a puzzling error for builders capable of such precision. But what if it is not an error? What if, at the time of construction, that alignment was perfect, not to the static pole of the planet's spin, but to the moving target of the magnetic pole? The Najdra temple complex in Malta presents a fascinating puzzle. Its lower temple is exquisitely aligned to the solstice sunrise, a clear celestial marker. Yet other parts of the site and other Maltese temples have orientations that do not match this astronomical logic. Some researchers propose these alignments may correlate with the position of magnetic north over 5,000 years ago, suggesting the builders were tracking two different cosmic systems, the sun in the sky and the magnetic pulse in the ground. This idea reaches its zenith with the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its sides are aligned to true north with an accuracy that still astounds engineers, a feat of celestial observation. But the pyramid also sits directly atop a significant local magnetic anomaly, a powerful disturbance in the Earth's field. Is this a coincidence, or was it a deliberate choice to anchor this colossal structure at a point of concentrated terrestrial energy? The architectural precision we see, therefore, might not be a single, static act. It suggests a living science, one that required constant observation and adaptation. The builders were not just aligning to a point, they were aligning to a moving point. This reframes their achievement entirely. It was not about finding north once and building forever. It was about understanding that the Earth itself was a dynamic, breathing entity, and their sacred architecture needed to move with its rhythm. Was this knowledge practical, allowing for more stable foundations in a geomagnetically active region, or was it deeply symbolic, a way to physically tether their temples to the living soul of the planet? The walls, in their silent, skewed angles, hold the answer. They tell us that to these builders, the world was not a passive stage, but an active participant in their construction. And if they were this attuned to the Earth's subtle shifts, what other planetary conversations were they listening to? The individual monuments are only part of a much larger story. When you step back and view a map scattered with ancient sites, a pattern begins to emerge, not of random placement, but of potential connection. This is the world of ley lines and telluric currents, two concepts that bridge folklore and geophysics, and which may offer the grandest explanation for why sacred sites are where they are. In the early 20th century, an English antiquarian named Alfred Watkins had a sudden vision of the British landscape. He saw it crisscrossed by straight tracks, invisible pathways that connected ancient hill forts, stone circles, churches built on older pagan sites, and even old marker stones. He called these alignments ley lines, suggesting they were ancient trade or pilgrimage routes. While his original idea was practical, it was quickly adopted by mystics who saw them as channels of spiritual or psychic energy. This divergence created a problem. The term ley line became associated with pseudoscience, making many serious researchers hesitant to even discuss it. But what if there was a measurable, physical phenomenon that could explain why these alignments might feel significant? This is where telluric currents enter the picture. Telluric currents are natural, extremely low-frequency electrical currents that flow through the Earth's crust and oceans. They are generated by interactions between the planet's magnetic field and solar activity, and their paths are shaped by geology. They flow more easily through certain materials like water-saturated ground or along geological faults. Think of the Earth not as a solid, inert ball, but as a body with a subtle circulatory system, a network of energy flowing just beneath our feet. The controversial hypothesis is that ancient monument builders, through long observation or a sensitivity we have since lost, could detect these flows or the localized magnetic fields they can create. They may have placed their temples, stone circles, and pyramids at powerful nodes where these currents intersected or emerged, like acupuncture points on the body of the Earth. This idea moves us from seeing a site in isolation to understanding it as part of a living, energetic landscape. There are measurable clues that support this line of thinking. The oracle at Delphi in Greece, one of the most sacred sites of the ancient world, sits directly atop a geological fault line. Fissures in the rock there were known to emit vapors, which historians believe contributed to the oracle's trance-like states. But faults are also conduits for telluric currents and can create strong local magnetic anomalies. Similarly, Glastonbury Tor in England, steeped in Arthurian legend, is a natural hill with a pronounced spiral terraced path. It, too, is associated with unusual magnetic readings and sits in a landscape riddled with underground water springs and geological complexity. Perhaps the most striking examples of potential landscape alignment are not in Europe but in Peru. The famous Nazca lines are vast geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, depicting animals and geometric shapes. While many are clearly ceremonial, some of the long, straight lines that stretch for miles across the plains have long puzzled archaeologists. Independent researchers like David Johnson have proposed a fascinating connection. Their studies suggest that many of these straight lines lead directly to sources of underground water, acting as a vast map of the aquifer system. Where water flows underground, the electrical conductivity of the ground changes, which in turn can influence local magnetic fields and telluric current paths. Could the Nazca have been marking something far more vital than ceremonial pathways? Could they have been charting the lifeblood of their arid world, the hidden water veins, and building their ceremonial centers at the points where this terrestrial energy was most accessible? This reframes the entire ancient worldview. The landscape was not a passive backdrop for human drama. It was a conscious, energetic participant. Mountains were not just high places, they were antennae. Springs were not just water sources, they were portals. Fault lines were not just cracks, they were seams where the inner life of the planet could be felt. To build in harmony with this system was to tap into a perpetual source of power, stability, and perhaps even communication with the divine. But sensing an invisible current flowing through rock and soil requires a special kind of tool. If they were listening to this terrestrial song, what instruments did they use to hear it? The tools of this lost science would have been as elegant as they were effective. Without digital sensors or complex machinery, ancient surveyors relied on a deep understanding of natural materials and simple physics. The most fundamental tool was likely the lodestone, a naturally magnetized piece of iron ore. Historical records from Han Dynasty China describe a fascinating device known as the south-pointing chariot, a complex mechanical carriage that used differential gearing to keep a figurine's arm perpetually pointing south, regardless of which way the chariot turned. While not a magnetic compass itself, it demonstrates a sophisticated desire for directional constancy, a concept that easily bridges to using a simple, floating lodestone. A lodestone suspended by a fine thread or carefully floated on a piece of wood in a still bowl of water would align itself with the Earth's magnetic field, providing a reliable, living indicator of north. This is not mere speculation, it is basic physics accessible to any observant culture that discovered these special stones. But the innovation may have gone further. Modern researchers and engineers like Christopher Dunn have proposed that certain ancient artifacts could have functioned as precision instruments. Imagine a sighting tube, similar to those used for astronomical observations, but with a lining of crushed magnetite or hematite. If such a tube were itself magnetized or sensitive to local fields, it could help a priest or builder align a sight line not just to a star, but to a magnetic bearing, correcting for any local anomaly. Even more intriguing is the potential use of water itself. Certain bacteria, known as magnetotactic bacteria, actually contain chains of magnetic crystals and align themselves with magnetic fields. In a calm, shaded pool, a culture that observed these microscopic phenomena could have used a container of such water as a biological compass, reading the subtle patterns formed by countless living magnets. The practical application of these tools brings the theory to life. Picture a construction site for a new temple. Before any stone is set, the master surveyor prepares a perfectly smoothed, leveled slab of stone, perhaps itself rich in magnetite. Using a suspended lodestone or a magnetized sighting rod, they carefully orient this slab so its longest edge aligns precisely with the local magnetic field, which may differ from true north. This slab becomes a reference table, a permanent magnetic datum etched into the ground. From this, builders can use simple ropes and stakes to transfer that exact orientation to the foundation trenches, ensuring the entire structure is borne in alignment with the unseen force. The accuracy achievable with such simple tools is often underestimated. A skilled practitioner using a floated lodestone in a windlass enclosure could achieve alignments within a single degree, a precision visible in countless ancient monuments. This speculation forces us to expand our definition of technology. We think of technology as circuits and steel, but at its core, technology is applied knowledge. A floating stone in a bowl is a tool. Understanding that a specific rock always seeks a specific direction is a profound scientific insight. The true instrument was not the lodestone alone, but the human mind that recognized its property and devised a repeatable method to harness it. This leads us to a deeper question. If these tools were so effective and the knowledge so valuable, what kind of mind and what kind of cultural framework were necessary to develop and preserve this science? The tools point the way, but it is the knowledge system behind them that truly constitutes the lost science. Perhaps the most sophisticated instrument of all was the one the builders carried within themselves. This leads us to a second, profoundly different method for sensing the Earth's energy, one that moves beyond physical tools and into the realm of consciousness itself. What if the primary detector was not a lodestone or a sighting tube, but the human nervous system? A compelling theory suggests that ancient priests, shamans, or specially trained individuals cultivated altered states of awareness to directly perceive environmental energies, including subtle shifts in the geomagnetic field. This idea sits at a fascinating intersection of modern neuroscience and ancient anthropology. Researchers like Michael Persinger conducted experiments showing that applying specific, weak magnetic fields to the temporal lobes of the brain could induce sensations of a presence, vivid visions, or feelings of profound connection, experiences commonly reported in mystical and religious contexts. This does not mean the experiences were not real, but rather that the human brain is an exquisitely sensitive receiver, capable of translating environmental stimuli into profound inner events. This biological sensitivity might have a physical anchor. Studies have found that the human brain, particularly the pineal gland, contains tiny crystals of magnetite, the same mineral that makes a lodestone work. While the exact function of these biogenic magnetite crystals is still debated, their presence is a tantalizing clue. It suggests our biology is, in a literal sense, wired to interact with the planet's magnetic field, even if that awareness is now buried beneath the noise of modern life. Across cultures, we find practices designed to quiet that noise and amplify this subtle perception. The ancient Greeks practiced dream incubation, sleeping in sacred temple precincts like those of Asclepius to receive healing visions. Native American traditions involved vision quests, where individuals spent days alone in wilderness areas seeking guidance. Australian Aboriginal songlines are not just maps of the land, but narratives that are sung while walking, creating a state of focused awareness that connects the traveler to the energetic pathways of the terrain. These are all methods of tuning the instrument of the mind. A powerful illustration returns us to the oracle at Delphi. The priestess, the Pythia, would descend into a chamber beneath the temple, sit on a tripod over a fissure in the rock, and inhale vapors rising from the ground. Historians note these vapors likely contained mild psychoactive gases from the geological fault, but that same fault line would also create a localized magnetic anomaly. The combination could have been transformative, a natural technology altering brain chemistry while simultaneously exposing the oracle to an unusual magnetic environment. In this heightened state, her pronouncements were not seen as random ravings, but as direct communications from the earth itself, from the god Apollo. This reframes the sacred purpose of alignment entirely. If a site was chosen for its powerful telluric currents and magnetic properties, then the rituals performed there were not just symbolic. They were operational. The aligned temple acted as a resonant chamber, and the prepared human consciousness within it became the active component, a living sensor attempting to interpret the whispers of the planet. This challenges our deepest assumptions about technology. We define it by gears and screens, but what if the ultimate technology was a trained, attentive mind in a carefully prepared body, situated within an architecturally tuned environment? The loss of this science, then, is not merely the forgetting of how to align a stone. It is the loss of a whole mode of perception, a way of listening to the world that we have largely silenced. If they could hear the earth sing, what were they trying to say back to it? The sacred science of alignment was driven by a vision of cosmic unity. For these ancient builders, the earth was not a dead rock adrift in space, but a living, breathing entity intimately connected to the heavens above. This worldview is often summarized by the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. The patterns of the stars were reflected in the landscape, and the forces that moved the planets also flowed through the ground. In this cosmology, aligning a monument to the Earth's magnetic field was not an engineering feat alone. It was a spiritual act of stitching the two realms together. The scholar Mircea Eliade wrote extensively about the concept of sacred space, a place where the ordinary world intersected with the divine. He described the axis mundi, the world axis, a central pillar or mountain that connected heaven, earth, and the underworld. This was not just a metaphor, it was a perceived reality, and magnetic north may have been its physical anchor, a stable, invisible pole in a seemingly shifting cosmos. This magnetic axis provided a fixed reference in a living universe, a way to ground the celestial order into the very bedrock. Different cultures symbolized this central connection with powerful objects. In ancient Egypt, the Benben stone was a sacred meteorite kept in the temple of Heliopolis, believed to be the primordial mound from which creation sprang. It was the point where the sun god first manifested, and its shape inspired the capstones of pyramids. In Greece, the omphalos at Delphi was a carved stone marker considered the navel of the world, the exact center where the divine spoke through the oracle. In shamanic traditions across Siberia and the Americas, the world tree or central pole served as the axis through which the spiritual traveler could ascend to the sky or descend to the spirit world. These are all expressions of the same profound idea, a need to designate and activate a point of connection. This philosophical driver finds stunning architectural expression at Angkor Wat in Cambodia. The vast temple complex is famously aligned to the sun at the spring equinox, but its design is also a microcosm of the Hindu universe, with concentric galleries representing mountain ranges and oceans. Some researchers examining local Khmer beliefs propose its layout and the placement of surrounding temples may also align with what are traditionally called dragon lines, conceptual pathways of terrestrial energy. The temple was not just a representation of the cosmos, it was intended to be a functioning conduit for its energy, a permanent battery for spiritual power. What does it mean to build a monument as a permanent prayer? It means every stone is a syllable, every alignment is a sentence in a dialogue with the divine. The structure becomes a machine for maintaining cosmic order, for ensuring the sun rises, the seasons turn, and life continues. The geomagnetic alignment provided the stable wiring for this machine, grounding the celestial blueprint into the living earth. This unified worldview explains why we see such similar patterns across disconnected continents. It was not a shared instruction manual, but a shared perception of reality. When we look at a stone circle in Britain, a pyramid in Egypt, or a temple in Cambodia, we are not just looking at ruins, we are looking at the fossilized intent of a culture that saw the universe as an interconnected whole and built their sacred spaces to participate in its eternal rhythm. This global pattern of intent is the final, and perhaps most convincing, evidence of a lost science. The sheer geographical distance between these sites presents the ultimate puzzle. In the sun-baked limestone of the Giza Plateau, the Great Pyramid stands as a testament to celestial and terrestrial alignment. Thousands of miles away, shrouded in the misty jungles of Cambodia, Angkor Wat mirrors this cosmic intent in its own sacred geometry. On the windswept Salisbury Plain, Stonehenge's sarsen stones capture the solstice sun, while high in the Peruvian Andes, the precisely fitted walls of Sacsayhuaman defy both time and conventional explanation. These cultures, separated by vast oceans and millennia, could not have exchanged blueprints, yet the echoes in their work are too persistent to ignore. This leads us to a profound question. Was the practice of geomagnetic alignment a universal human discovery, stumbled upon independently by isolated cultures, or does it hint at a shared, deeper layer of forgotten knowledge that once connected our ancient world? Comparative researchers like author Graham Hancock have long argued for patterns that transcend coincidence. They point not to evidence of direct contact, which remains elusive, but to a commonality of principle. It is not that every culture built pyramids, but that many, from Mesoamerica to Southeast Asia, constructed monumental, pyramidal forms oriented with staggering precision to the cardinal directions. They did not all use the same stone, but many selectively quarried and transported blocks rich in quartz or magnetite, materials known to resonate and hold energy. Their sacred sites are so frequently located atop powerful geological features, aquifers, fault lines, or magnetic anomalies that the pattern begins to feel intentional. The Great Pyramid, as discussed, sits on a significant magnetic hotspot. Intriguingly, similar claims have been made for the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, and even for the controversial Visochka Hill in Bosnia, which some researchers propose is a massive, ancient pyramid-shaped structure. While the Bosnian claims are heavily debated within the archaeological community, the very debate highlights our fascination with these global parallels. The key is to move beyond simplistic diffusionist theories, which suggest a single, traveling master civilization. A more nuanced view considers independent innovation driven by a shared human experience of the natural world. Isolated cultures gazing at the same stars and standing on the same magnetically active planet may have arrived at similar conclusions through observation and intuition. This points to a common human intuition, a latent sensitivity to the living Earth. Perhaps in an age before the constant hum of technology, human perception was attuned to subtler frequencies. The feeling of a sacred place, a location that inspires awe and stillness, might be more than a psychological reaction. It could be a biological and spiritual response to measurable geophysical phenomena, shifts in magnetism, subtle telluric currents, or resonant acoustics. A shaman in the Amazon, a druid in Britain, and a priest in Sumer may have all learned, through tradition and altered states of consciousness, to identify these powerful nodes in the landscape. They then expressed that knowledge through the architectural language available to their culture: stone circles, ziggurats, or pyramids. The form varied, but the foundational purpose, to mark, amplify, and harmonize with that terrestrial energy, remained strikingly consistent. This global survey reveals not a monolithic ancient civilization, but a chorus of disparate voices all singing a similar song about the nature of reality. They all perceived the Earth not as a resource, but as a resonant partner in a cosmic dance. To understand the precision of this partnership, we must examine the masterwork that many consider the pinnacle of this lost science, a structure where every measurement seems to whisper a secret about the planet itself. The Great Pyramid of Giza presents a riddle wrapped in stone, a perfect case study where every established fact seems to whisper a deeper mystery. It stands as the ultimate monument for testing theories of a lost science, a place where orthodox archaeology and speculative engineering meet in a silent debate. On one hand, Egyptology provides a clear and elegant explanation. The pyramid is a royal tomb, a colossal symbol of pharaonic power, aligned with breathtaking precision to the cardinal points. Its sides face true north, south, east, and west with an error of less than 1/15 of a single degree, a feat that demonstrates masterful astronomical observation. The builders likely used the circumpolar stars, tracking their arc across the night sky to find that immutable axis of the world. This celestial alignment is a monumental achievement in its own right, a testament to a civilization deeply in tune with the heavens. Yet, for those who suspect a geomagnetic component, this precision is only the first layer. The site itself sits atop a powerful local magnetic anomaly. Some geophysical surveys suggest the plateau has a unique signature, and the pyramid's position may have been chosen to harness or interact with this terrestrial energy. The composition of its materials deepens the intrigue. The original outer casing stones, now mostly gone, were made of highly polished Tura limestone. But more importantly, many of the interior blocks, particularly the massive granite beams in the so-called King's Chamber, are rich in quartz crystals. Quartz is a piezoelectric material, meaning it generates a small electrical charge when subjected to mechanical pressure. The weight of the pyramid itself, estimated at 6 million tons, exerts immense constant pressure on these stones. Could this have been a deliberate design feature? Engineers like Christopher Dunn have proposed the radical power plant theory, suggesting the pyramid was a machine for converting the Earth's vibrational energy into usable power. In this model, the subterranean chambers, the granite-lined upper chambers, and the unique architecture all worked in concert to resonate with the planet's natural frequencies, with the quartz-laden granite acting as a transducer. This idea, while far outside mainstream archaeology, is fueled by tangible anomalies. Researchers, including the late Joseph Jochmans, have pointed to the curious absence of soot or torch marks in the interior passages, the mysterious lack of traditional burial evidence for a pharaoh, and the advanced machining marks on hard stone that seem to defy the presumed copper and stone tools of the era. How were these granite boxes, with their precise, smooth interiors crafted without iron tools? The debate intensifies when we look at experimental research. Modern studies using scale models and radio wave simulations have indicated that the pyramid's shape can indeed concentrate electromagnetic energy, both within its chambers and in the space around its base. The geometry seems to focus ambient energy towards specific points. Is this a coincidence of form or the signature of an intended function? These questions force us to weigh two very different interpretations. The archaeological consensus sees a tomb of unparalleled grandeur, a symbol frozen in time. The alternative view, pieced together from physical evidence and engineering principles, sees a dynamic machine, a structure designed to interact with the living Earth. Perhaps both contain a fragment of the truth. Could the pyramid have served a dual purpose, a tomb that was also a temple of transformation, using aligned stone and terrestrial energy to facilitate a spiritual journey? The pyramid does not give up its secrets easily. Its silent, imposing presence challenges us to look beyond the obvious, to consider that the greatest achievements of the ancient world might have been rooted in a science that viewed energy, matter, and spirit as one unified field. If this single structure holds such profound puzzles, what does it suggest about the wider network of ancient sites? This fundamental question divides the entire inquiry. Were these alignments a form of advanced engineering, a spiritual technology, or perhaps something that seamlessly blended both? The spectrum of proposed purposes stretches from the deeply pragmatic to the profoundly transcendental, and the truth may require us to hold both ends in mind simultaneously. On the practical end, researchers propose functions grounded in material benefit. A monument aligned to magnetic north could serve as a permanent, unchanging navigational beacon for a culture without maps, a true north carved in stone. In seismically active regions, some geologists speculate that building upon a stable magnetic alignment, or atop a geological fault that channels energy, might have offered a form of vibrational stability, a way to let the Earth's own rhythms pass through a structure rather than shatter it. There is also intriguing research from materials science on how specific magnetic fields can influence water molecule clustering and even seed germination. Could the placement of a temple have been intended to subtly affect local microclimates or groundwater flow, turning a sacred site into a node of enhanced fertility? These are testable physical hypotheses that frame the ancients as brilliant environmental engineers. Yet, this practical view feels incomplete when confronted with the sheer artistic effort and spiritual context of these places. This leads to the other end of the spectrum, where alignment is seen as a sacred technology for consciousness. Dowsers and geomancers today speak of sites as amplifiers of a subtle energy, sometimes called earth energy or Chi, which can influence well-being. Modern studies do show that controlled electromagnetic fields can affect brainwave patterns and biological rhythms. If ancient priests understood this, even intuitively, then a temple aligned to a terrestrial power spot could have been designed as a resonant chamber to alter human awareness. The pyramid texts of Egypt speak of the pharaoh's soul ascending via a celestial ladder, while traditions worldwide describe sacred spaces as portals or stargates for spiritual travel. In this view, the alignment was not about stabilizing stone, but about orienting the human soul, creating a fixed axis for spiritual journeying between worlds. A powerful illustration of this blended purpose is found at Newgrange in Ireland. This massive, 5,000-year-old passage tomb is famously aligned so that the rising sun on the winter solstice floods its inner chamber with a beam of light for just 17 minutes. This is a clear celestial alignment, a breathtaking connection to the rebirth of the sun. But the site is also reported by researchers to sit atop strong telluric currents. Here, the astronomical and the terrestrial meet. The structure captures a moment of celestial glory while being rooted in a place of terrestrial power. It served as a resting place for remains, a precise solar calendar, and likely, a temple for rituals that bridged the world of the living, the world of the ancestors, and the cyclical forces of nature. It was practical, spiritual, and cosmological all at once. So, which purpose feels most resonant? The answer may lie in rejecting the modern dichotomy that separates utility from spirituality. For a civilization that perceived the earth as a living being, enhancing crop yields was a spiritual act, ensuring the community's survival was a sacred duty. Stabilizing a temple against earthquakes was about preserving a conduit to the gods. The scale and effort of these monuments suggest their purpose was total, encompassing every aspect of life, death, and cosmic order. They were machines for living in harmony with a universe seen as intelligent and interconnected. This unified intent makes their eventual silence even more perplexing. If this science was so central to their survival and cosmology, how could it have ever been lost? The answer may lie not in a single disaster, but in a slow, profound forgetting. The very ground beneath their sacred monuments may have betrayed them. What if the science was not forgotten, but became obsolete overnight, its core principles rendered meaningless by a planetary event so profound it reshaped the sky itself? This is the Cataclysm question, and it centers on a terrifying possibility, a geomagnetic reversal or rapid pole shift. Modern science confirms the Earth's magnetic poles have flipped many times in deep history, a process where north becomes south and south becomes north. These full reversals take thousands of years, but within them are shorter, more violent episodes called geomagnetic excursions, where the field weakens dramatically and the poles wander erratically before snapping back. One such event, the Lashump excursion, occurred around 41,000 years ago. For a period of roughly 1,000 years, the planet's magnetic field weakened to a fraction of its strength, and the magnetic poles traveled far from their normal positions. During such a time, the protective shield that deflects solar and cosmic radiation grows dangerously thin. The sky would have been filled with intense auroras, even at equatorial latitudes, and radiation levels on the ground would have increased. For a culture whose entire cosmology and architecture were built on a stable magnetic axis, this would have been a crisis of unimaginable scale. Imagine the priestly class, the keepers of the alignment science. For generations, their tools, their reference stones, their very temples have pointed faithfully to a sacred northern point. Then, over a few human lifetimes, that point begins to drift. The lodestone no longer aligns with the temple's central axis. The sunrise, once perfectly framed by a gateway, now seems askew. The world's invisible order is coming undone. The foundational pillar of their reality, the fixed pole around which their spiritual and physical world was organized, is moving. This would not be a simple navigational error. It would be a theological and scientific collapse. The knowledge itself did not vanish. It simply stopped working, transforming from precise science into confusing myth. Could this explain the global flood narratives and myths of world ages ending? Cultures from the Maya to the Hindus describe previous suns or worlds that were destroyed, often by water or fire from the sky. The ancient Egyptians spoke of Tepe the first time, a golden age before a great upheaval. Are these folk memories of a time when the heavens literally seemed to fall, when the sun appeared to change its path, and the familiar stars swirled in a chaotic dance? Geologist Robert Schoch has long argued for a solar-induced cataclysm around 12,000 years ago, a period that coincides with the end of the last ice age and the mysterious Younger Dryas cooling event. He proposes that a massive solar outburst striking a weakened magnetic field could have triggered global fires, floods, and climatic chaos. In such a scenario, the monuments themselves might have become relics of a broken world. This brings us to Göbekli Tepe, the stunningly complex stone circle in Turkey, dated to around 11,500 years ago, squarely in this turbulent period. Its T-shaped pillars, carved with intricate animal reliefs, were not left to the elements. Around 8000 BC, the entire site was deliberately, carefully buried under thousands of tons of soil and rubble. Mainstream archaeology interprets this as a ritual closure, but could it have been an act of preservation? If the knowledge encoded in its alignment was suddenly made unstable by a shifting magnetic field, burying the site might have been a way to protect it, to save the sacred geometry from a sky that no longer matched its design. The stones were hidden, waiting for a future age that could understand them again. How does a civilization recover from the loss of its foundational paradigm? It starts over, but it carries fragments forward. The old science, now dysfunctional, becomes legend. The precise alignment techniques devolve into symbolic gestures. The master surveyors who read the Earth's pulse become mythic figures, gods or giants who moved mountains. The practical technology of levitating stones with sound or water, hinted at in various traditions, becomes a metaphor for spiritual ascension. The recovery is slow, built on the ruins of a much more sophisticated understanding of the world. The shadow of a possible cataclysm forces us to see these ancient sites not as the proud beginnings of human civilization, but perhaps as the resilient remnants of something even older, struggling to preserve a flicker of knowledge through a planetary storm. If fragments survived, where did they go, and into whose hands did they fall? Our ancient ancestors may have left their most important instructions not in stone, but in story. When a cataclysm disrupts the physical world, oral tradition becomes the most durable library. To understand the fragments of the lost science, we must learn to listen to mythology not as fantasy, but as a coded language, a way to transmit complex geophysical knowledge across generations who no longer had the tools to measure it directly. The recurring symbols that echo around the globe, dragons, serpents, and world trees, begin to make a startling new kind of sense when viewed through this lens. Scholars of Earth mysteries like John Mitchell spent lifetimes exploring this connection, suggesting that what we dismiss as folklore is often a precise description of the living landscape. The tales are the encrypted manuals. Take the dragon, a creature of immense power found in traditions from Europe to China. It is almost universally associated with the earth, dwelling in caves, guarding hoards, and influencing the very fertility of the land. In Chinese geomancy, the practice of feng shui, the land is crisscrossed by dragon lines, invisible channels of vital energy called kai. These lines dictate where to build homes, temples, and tombs to harness positive energy and avoid the dragon's wrath. Is this mere superstition or a poetic mapping of the Telluric currents we discussed earlier? The dragon, with its serpentine body, becomes a perfect symbol for those sinuous, underground flows of energy. Its lair, the place of its greatest power, corresponds to a node or intersection where that energy surfaces, a site often marked by ancient monuments or revered as sacred. This symbolic interpretation extends to the world tree or axis mundi, the central pillar connecting heaven, earth, and the underworld. In a stable geomagnetic system, the magnetic North Pole serves as a perfect, invisible axis for the entire planet. It is the fixed point around which the compass, and by extension, the navigable world, turns. In myth, this becomes Yggdrasil in Norse tradition, the great ash tree whose roots reach the underworld and branches hold the heavens. It is the ladder for shamans, the conduit for prayers, the central reference in a living cosmos. The symbol preserves the concept of a planetary axis long after the precise science of locating it may have faded. Other symbols fit this pattern with uncanny precision. Consider the Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail. It represents cycles, eternity, and the unity of all things. But in the context of Earth energy, it could beautifully depict a closed circuit of telluric current, a looping flow of energy within the planet itself, with no beginning and no end. Then there is the caduceus, the staff with two serpents entwined, now a symbol of medicine. This could symbolize the balanced flow of positive and negative electrical charges within the Earth, or the dualistic energies that must be harmonized for health and vitality, both in the land and in the body. A powerful physical example of this mythic encoding stands in Ohio. The Great Serpent Mound is a breathtaking, quarter-mile-long effigy earthwork shaped like a coiling serpent, its mouth open as if swallowing an egg-shaped mound. Archaeologists debate its age, but its alignments are precise. The serpent's head aligns to the summer solstice sunset, while its coiled body points to other significant solar events. But the site holds another secret. Geological surveys have indicated the presence of magnetic and even low-level radioactive anomalies in the area. The serpent, a universal symbol of Earth energy, is physically molded into a landscape that resonates with unusual terrestrial forces. Local Native American traditions speak of powerful spirits within the earth here. Is the mound simply a representation of a snake, or is it a giant map, a permanent marker placed by people who understood this location as a significant node in the living body of the land? This invites a reflective question. What old stories are told about the hills, springs, or strange stone formations in your own region? Tales of fairy rings, haunted hollows, or dragons' lairs might be more than whimsy. They could be the faint, remembered echoes of a time when people perceived the landscape as a dynamic, energetic being, and marked its powerful places with story because they could no longer do so with science. These symbolic fragments scattered across global folklore were the seeds. They would not be lost but carefully gathered and replanted in the formal gardens of a later age, cultivated into the intricate systems of esoteric knowledge that sought to rebuild the bridge between humanity and a hidden world. The whispers of the earth did not fall silent with the last stone set at Göbekli Tepe. They simply changed their language, retreating from the monumental scale of architecture into the cryptic pages of manuscripts and the secret rituals of initiates. When the old science of alignment could no longer be practiced openly, its principles were preserved in a new form as philosophy and occult art. This is the alchemical and hermetic inheritance, where the geomagnetic intuition of the ancients was translated into a quest to understand the hidden soul of the world itself. In the workshops of medieval alchemists and the studies of Renaissance magi, the idea of a living, energetic earth found powerful new voices. The Swiss physician and alchemist Paracelsus wrote of the Archaeus, a vital force that permeated all of nature, a spirit of the earth that governed growth, health, and transformation. For him, illness was a disharmony with this force, and healing meant restoring the proper magnetic alignment, so to speak, between the human microcosm and the planetary macrocosm. A century later, the Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher produced intricate diagrams attempting to map the magnetic flows of the planet, depicting it as a giant organism with veins of energy circulating from its core. These were not yet the mathematical equations of modern geophysics, but they were a profound recognition that the Earth was animate, a being with a hidden physiology. The core pursuit of alchemy itself mirrors this shift perfectly. On the surface, alchemy sought to transform base lead into spiritual gold, but at a deeper level, this was a metaphor for the transformation of coarse, unconscious matter into refined, awakened spirit. The alchemist's laboratory, with its furnaces and alembics, was a microcosm of the Earth's own processes. The goal was not merely to make a metal, but to learn the art of harnessing and directing the subtle energies that flowed through all creation, the very same energies that the monument builders had once anchored with stone. This philosophical system gave names to the forces the ancients had sensed. The anima mundi, or world soul, was the concept of a universal consciousness imbuing the natural world, an intelligence within the magnetic fabric of reality. The legendary philosopher's stone, therefore, was imagined not just as a substance, but as the ultimate condenser of this cosmic and terrestrial energy, a perfected material that could align and amplify the Archaeus itself. Lodestones, those natural magnets, ceased to be simple tools of alignment and became central to magical practices. They were used in talismans to attract health or fortune, in rituals to draw down celestial influences, and in experiments to prove the sympathy between all things. The knowledge had moved from the public square to the locked library, from the collective project of a culture to the private initiation of the seeker. We can see a stunning architectural echo of this hermetic principle in the soaring vaults of Europe's Gothic cathedrals. Take Chartres Cathedral in France, a masterpiece built deliberately upon an ancient Gallic sacred site, which itself was likely a place of Telluric power. Its design is a web of sacred geometry. Its famed labyrinth walked as a meditative journey to the center, and its stained glass filtering light into a spectrum of divine revelation. Some researchers, like Louis Charpentier, have suggested the cathedral's layout and proportions were intended to act as a colossal resonator, channeling and focusing spiritual energy for those within its walls. This is not the explicit geomagnetic alignment of a pyramid, but it is the same principle translated into a new symbolic language. The cathedral becomes a machine for transcendence, using stone, geometry, and placement to create a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a direct descendant of the ancient temple builders' intent. Why did this profound understanding of the world retreat into secrecy? The answers are woven into history itself. The rise of dogmatic religious institutions often viewed such earth-centric knowledge as pagan heresy. The chaos of wars and plagues fragmented centers of learning, Most significantly, the emerging worldview of what would become modern science began to separate the observer from the observed, to see the Earth as a dead mechanism rather than a living being. The Hermeticists, clinging to the idea of a unified, conscious cosmos, were pushed to the margins, yet in their dusty tomes and symbolic art, they kept the flame alive. They preserved the crucial idea that the universe was interconnected, that invisible forces linked the stars to the stones and the human heart to the planetary core. This secret thread, stretching from the Renaissance magus to the ancient Druid, did not break. It simply waited for a new age of inquiry, one that would begin not with mysticism, but with the simple, curious observation of a swinging needle and a lump of ore. The stage was set for magnetism to be rediscovered, not as magic, but as measurable science. The Renaissance magus, with his lodestone and cryptic diagrams, was a keeper of the flame, but the fire of true discovery required a new kind of mind. It arrived with the meticulous curiosity of an English physician named William Gilbert. In the year 1600, serving as a doctor to Queen Elizabeth I, Gilbert published a revolutionary work titled De Magnete, on the magnet. With bold, declarative prose, he made an assertion that would shatter old paradigms and lay the foundation for modern geophysics. The Earth itself, he declared, was a giant magnet. This was not a mystical speculation, but a conclusion drawn from relentless experiment. Gilbert had taken a spherical lodestone, which he called a tarella, or little Earth, and used small iron needles to map the magnetic field around it. He demonstrated that these needles behaved exactly like compasses on our planet, dipping and pointing in ways that mirrored the behavior of real navigational compasses. The Earth was not simply influenced by magnetism, it was the source. For the first time in the modern era, the force that ancient cultures may have revered was pulled from the realm of spirit and placed squarely within the domain of measurable, physical science. The key breakthrough was this transition from mystical force to quantifiable phenomenon. Gilbert systematically dismantled superstitions, like the idea that garlic could destroy a compass's power, replacing them with reproducible observations. He identified magnetic inclination, the downward dip of a compass needle that increases as one moves toward the magnetic poles. He described the magnetic poles themselves, though he believed they were fixed in alignment with the geographic poles. His work ignited a new age of exploration, both geographic and scientific. As European ships charted the globe, navigators meticulously recorded magnetic declination, the angle between true north and magnetic north. These maps revealed a complex and puzzling picture. The field was not perfectly aligned and it changed over time. By the 18th century, the quest to solve the longitude problem, the greatest scientific challenge of the age, relied intimately on understanding this magnetic variation. Practical needs, echoing the ancient navigational imperative that might have first spurred the alignment science, now drove its rigorous study forward. The mathematical description of this planetary force would require a genius of another order. In the 19th century, the German mathematician Carl Friedrich Gauss took the final, formal step. He was not satisfied with mere mapping, he sought a fundamental law. Gauss and his colleague Wilhelm Weber established a global network of magnetic observatories, collecting precise data from around the world. From this, Gauss developed the first comprehensive mathematical theory of Earth's magnetism. He proved its origin was within the planet, described its dipole nature much like a simple bar magnet, and introduced the concept of secular variation, the slow, centuries-long drift of the magnetic poles. The field was no longer a mysterious emanation. It was a dynamic, physical entity that could be described by equations. The science of geomagnetism was born, precise, powerful, and seemingly complete. Yet a curious divergence occurred. This newly rigorous science, armed with its formulas and observatories, looked forward to navigation and physics. It did not look back. the ancient monuments that dotted the landscape were seen through an entirely different lens, as relics of primitive religion or displays of political power. The idea that their builders might have possessed a sophisticated, empirical understanding of the very force Gilbert and Gauss had just defined seemed absurd to the emerging scientific and archaeological establishments. The two streams of knowledge, the ancient architectural and the modern physical, flowed in parallel without meeting. Why would a scientist studying magnetic inclination think to check its alignment against the walls of a temple built 4,000 years prior? The disciplines had become separate languages, each convinced it was describing a different world. Modern science, now equipped with potent tools, had meticulously rediscovered the melody, but had forgotten there might have been an earlier symphony composed in stone. This separation, however, would not last forever. The very instruments created by this new science would eventually turn their gaze backward, listening for the faint, persistent hum within ancient stones that the equations could not explain. The magnetometer is a modern wand that listens to the whispers of the past. In the hands of today's archaeological geophysicists, this sophisticated device has become the critical bridge between speculative theory and measurable data, allowing us to test the alignment hypotheses with scientific rigor. Teams from institutions like the University of Bradford now routinely survey ancient landscapes, not with shovels, but with arrays of sensors that map the invisible. The methodology is precise and revealing. A magnetometer measures tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field. When passed over the ground, it detects disturbances caused by buried features. A fired hearth, for instance, realigns the magnetic minerals in the soil as it cools, creating a permanent magnetic signature. A filled pit or a ditch holding different soil will have a distinct magnetic contrast to the surrounding Earth. Even deposits of deliberately placed magnetic material, like crushed hematite or magnetite-rich stones, announce their presence as clear anomalies on the resulting map. More advanced tools like electrical resistivity tomography send currents into the ground to measure how easily they pass through, revealing structures like buried walls or moisture-filled ritual shafts. Together, these non-invasive surveys paint a detailed picture of what lies beneath, revealing the full complexity of a site without disturbing a single stone. At the majestic Callanish stones on Scotland's Isle of Lewis, a landscape of standing stones older than Stonehenge, such a survey yielded profound insights. The magnetometry data revealed far more than just the visible circle. It showed a complex pattern of magnetic anomalies, including what appear to be the remains of a large circular burial mound at the site's center and evidence of intense, repeated burning. But perhaps most intriguingly, the survey suggested the entire monumental complex was positioned on a subtle magnetic gradient, a natural slope in the Earth's magnetic field. Could the builders have sensed this gradient, this terrestrial tilt, and chosen this specific hillside to amplify or interact with its unique energy? The data doesn't provide a motive, but it clearly shows the site occupies a magnetically distinct location, inviting that very question. Similar work in the Americas has uncovered compelling evidence. Surveys at Olmec sites have confirmed the presence of large, man-made pavements made from magnetic hematite, while work at certain mound complexes in North America has identified magnetic hotspots aligned with astronomical features. Each scan adds a new data point, a new piece to the puzzle. These tools allow us to see the ancient site as a living system, with both visible architecture and an invisible magnetic anatomy. The patterns emerging from the data are rarely random. They show intention, a repeated choice to associate ceremonial activity with magnetically active materials and places. So, is this technology finally allowing us to hear the signal the stones have been broadcasting for millennia? The maps say yes, but they speak in a language of gradients and anomalies, not words. They confirm the physical conditions that would make geomagnetic alignment not just possible, but a perceptible feature of the sacred landscape. The evidence is no longer just in the alignment of a wall to the sky, but in the very soil upon which that wall was built. This rigorous, ground-truthing approach transforms folklore into a frontier of science. It proves that the ancient builders were interacting with a measurable aspect of their environment, one we are only now learning to decode with our own electronic senses. But a compelling theory must also withstand the cold light of skepticism. To truly understand the lost science, we must also listen to its most thoughtful critics, those who see not a forgotten technology, but a series of fascinating coincidences explained by simpler means. This is not about dismissing mystery, but about sharpening our inquiry, separating genuine signal from the noise of our own pattern-seeking minds. The primary counterargument rests on a foundational principle of science, Occam's razor, which suggests the simplest explanation is often the correct one. For mainstream archaeologists like Kenneth Feder, the simplest explanation for a temple's orientation is the one we can most easily observe, the sun or a prominent star. These were the dramatic, visible clockworks of the ancient sky, directly tied to agriculture and ceremony. Why invoke an invisible, difficult-to-measure magnetic force when a solstice sunrise provides a clear, reproducible, and spiritually potent reason for alignment? Furthermore, there is a striking lack of direct textual or artistic evidence from most of these cultures explicitly describing magnetic alignment techniques. The ancient Egyptians left vast records detailing astronomy, medicine, and religion, but no clear manual for magnet-based surveying. This absence, skeptics argue, is deafening. If this science was so central, where are the instructions? A second powerful counterpoint comes from the Earth itself. Our planet's geology is not a blank canvas. It is a complex, magnetically active landscape. Rich iron ore deposits, volcanic basalt flows, and deep tectonic fault lines all create significant local magnetic anomalies. A later culture arriving at such a location might sense it as a special or powerful place, feeling an intuitive pull, and choose to build their sacred site there. But they would be building on the effect, not necessarily understanding the geophysical cause. The site feels sacred because of the anomaly, not because they engineered the anomaly. This turns the theory on its head. The monument is a response to geology, not a manipulation of it. The powerful presence felt at a place like Delphi could be entirely due to its fault line and gases, with any magnetic effects being a secondary, unintentional feature of a site chosen for other, more tangible reasons. Then we must confront the mathematics of chance. With thousands of ancient monuments scattered across the globe, and with the cardinal directions being a logical, stable basis for any symmetrical construction, some are bound by pure statistics to align with magnetic north or any other arbitrary point, simply by random chance. Our brains are wired for apophenia, the tendency to find meaningful patterns in random data. We see constellations in stars and faces in clouds. Once the idea of geomagnetic alignment is suggested, it becomes easy to look at any ancient site, measure its orientation, and if it is close to a magnetic bearing, claim a connection. But how close is close enough? A few degrees of alignment could be construction error, settling over millennia, or a deliberate choice based on a nearby river or mountain, not a hidden pole. Even the most precise celestial alignments are not immune to this critical lens. The slow wobble of Earth's axis, called precession, changes our view of the stars over a 26,000-year cycle. A temple perfectly aligned to a star 3,000 years ago would not be aligned to that same star today. This drift can make an ancient astronomical intention look like a mysterious, off-kilter alignment to our modern eyes, potentially misdirecting us toward a geomagnetic explanation when an astronomical one was the original purpose. Let's apply this skeptical toolkit to a real example. Take a hypothetical temple whose central corridor points 5 degrees east of true north. A geomagnetic proponent might note that magnetic north was likely in that position when the temple was built. A skeptic would first check if that corridor instead frames the rising point of a particularly bright star important to that culture at that historical moment. They would survey the local topography. Perhaps a sacred mountain peak lies directly on that sightline. They would examine the construction methods for potential error margins. Only after these simpler, more documentable possibilities are exhausted does the magnetic hypothesis become necessary. This process invites a moment of honest self-reflection. When we encounter a grand, ancient mystery, are we drawn to the most elegant, complex solution? Does the idea of a lost high science hold a romantic appeal that a simpler, more pragmatic explanation lacks? Engaging with these skeptical counterarguments does not diminish the wonder of the monuments. It deepens our respect for the ancient builders. It challenges us to demand more robust evidence, to look beyond appealing patterns and seek the subtle, corroborating clues that turn a captivating story into a supported historical possibility. The search becomes a dialogue between intuition and evidence, between the desire for lost knowledge and the discipline of scientific scrutiny. This rigorous back and forth is what ultimately forges stronger theories. And it is this very process of debate that leads us to the most tantalizing question of all. If this science was real and then lost, could its principles be recovered and understood in our modern language, not of myth, but of mathematics and physics? The principles of sacred alignment did not vanish into the dust of history. They simply moved indoors. The grand, public science of orienting temples to the Earth's pulse transformed into a private, living art practiced in homes, gardens, and city plans across the world. This is the enduring tradition of geomancy, the art of placement, and its most famous system, feng shui. At its heart lies the same core principle that guided the pyramid builders, harmonizing human structures with the subtle energies of the environment. Where ancient priests sought to tap the planet's magnetic heartbeat, a modern feng shui master speaks of Kai, the vital life force that flows through landscapes, buildings, and living beings. This is not a break from the past, but a direct evolution, a translation of monumental knowledge into a language of daily life. Practitioners describe dragon lines, paths of concentrated Kai coursing through the land, which are the direct cultural cousins of the Telluric currents and ley lines we discussed earlier. The goal remains identical: to identify these powerful flows and place ourselves in beneficial alignment with them, to live in a state of supported harmony rather than draining conflict. The tools of this living tradition make the connection explicit. A feng shui consultant does not arrive with a magnetometer, but with a luo pan, an intricate Chinese compass whose concentric rings map not just directions, but astrological cycles, elements, and symbolic meanings. Before laying a foundation or arranging a bedroom, the master uses this instrument to take a precise sitting facing of the structure, determining how the environmental Kai enters and circulates. This meticulous orientation echoes the ancient surveyor leveling his magnetite slab to find a magnetic bearing. The subsequent adjustments, using the Bagua map to align rooms and furniture with life aspirations, are the small-scale application of a once colossal architectural philosophy. In the West, the geomancer or dowser walks the land with rods or pendulums, seeking to feel the subtle pull of underground water or energy lines, a practice that directly parallels the hypothesized methods of ancient site selection. These are not mere superstitions, they are sensory technologies refined over centuries, aimed at detecting what our instruments now measure as electromagnetic variations and geological anomalies. Perhaps no modern city better illustrates the merger of this ancient intuition with Enlightenment-era planning than Washington, D.C. Its designer, Pierre-Charles L'Enfant, envisioned a grand capital filled with symbolic geometry, wide avenues, and monumental vistas. But scholars of sacred geometry like David Ovasson have noted deeper layers. The city's layout incorporates axes and alignments to celestial events, such as the summer solstice sunset along the National Mall. Furthermore, the involvement of Freemasons, an organization steeped in Hermetic and architectural symbolism, in the construction of key buildings like the Capitol, suggests an intentional encoding of esoteric principles. The street plan itself, with its radiating avenues and symbolic nodes, can be read as a giant geomantic template, an attempt to channel the energy and destiny of a new nation through its very footprint. It is a powerful example of how the impulse to align human endeavor with cosmic and terrestrial order persisted, even in an age of reason. This living link asks a profound question of us today. In our relentless pursuit of efficiency and density, have we forgotten something our ancestors knew in their bones? When we feel an instinctive sense of peace in a well-proportioned room, or a subtle unease in a cramped, dark apartment, are we sensing a disruption in the flow of environmental chi, a modern version of the disharmony ancient builders sought to avoid? The resurgence of interest in feng shui, biophilic design, and the study of how buildings affect our well-being suggests a deep, collective yearning to restore that connection. We are perhaps unconsciously seeking the same harmony our ancestors built into stone, only now we are searching for it in our living rooms and workspaces. This enduring human impulse is now finding a new conversation partner: cutting-edge science. Researchers in environmental psychology and building biology are beginning to quantify what geomancers have long described, studying how natural light, airflow, electromagnetic fields, and material choices directly impact stress, sleep, and cognitive function. The lost science of alignment is not being excavated from ruins alone. It is being rediscovered in our own need for a living, healthy habitat. The frontier of this mystery now merges the laboratory with the landscape. Two emerging fields, biomagnetism and archaeoacoustics, are providing a new vocabulary to describe what ancient builders may have understood intuitively. These disciplines suggest that the true purpose of these sites was not singular but synergistic, designed to engage multiple senses and biological systems at once. Biomagnetism studies how living organisms, from bacteria to humans, interact with magnetic fields. We know migrating birds navigate using an internal magnetic compass, and certain bacteria align themselves with the Earth's field. For humans, research by scientists like Michael Persinger has shown that applying specific, weak magnetic patterns to the brain can alter states of awareness, sometimes producing sensations of presence or vivid imagery. This points to a profound possibility that prolonged exposure to a naturally occurring magnetic anomaly within a carefully built environment could have a measurable, subtle effect on human consciousness. It reframes a sacred site not just as a place to worship, but as a place to biologically change. Simultaneously, the field of archaeoacoustics listens to the stones. Researchers like Dr. Paul Devereux have traveled the world with microphones and frequency analyzers, recording the sonic properties of ancient chambers. They have discovered that many sites possess extraordinary acoustic characteristics. Some stone circles resonate at specific frequencies, while passage tombs like Newgrange can amplify and prolong certain sounds. At the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, an underground labyrinth carved from solid limestone, certain chambers resonate at a frequency close to 110 Hz, a tone that studies suggest can shift brainwave patterns toward states of relaxed focus or meditation. The sound within these spaces was not an accident, it was an architectural feature. Now consider the convergence. What if the local magnetic field and the built acoustics were designed to work together? A stone chamber rich in quartz, a piezoelectric material, could act as a transducer. When sound waves from chanting or even tectonic stress vibrate through it, the quartz can generate a faint electromagnetic field. Conversely, a shifting magnetic field could theoretically influence the resonance of the space itself. This creates a feedback loop between sound, stone, and magnetism, a holistic environment where the physical structure actively modulates the experience inside it. Experiments are beginning to test this synthesis. During solstice events at sites like Newgrange, teams have taken simultaneous measurements of magnetic fluctuations and acoustic resonance. The goal is to see if the celestial event, the arrival of the sunbeam, correlates with a detectable change in the site's energetic or sonic profile. Other investigations focus on infrasound, frequencies below the range of human hearing that can nonetheless induce feelings of unease, awe, or even spiritual encounter. Certain geological settings and large stone structures can generate infrasound from wind or underground water, potentially turning a temple into a subtle, inaudible engine of emotion. This research invites us to reimagine an ancient ritual. It was likely a full-body experience. The participants would see the aligned light, hear the resonant chants that filled the chamber with palpable vibration, and stand within a stone structure tuned to a local power spot in the earth. Their very biology might have been gently nudged by these combined forces toward a shared, altered state. The ceremony was not just a symbolic performance, it was a sophisticated technology of consciousness, using the environment as an active component. The ancient understanding appears to have been holistic, seeing sound, magnetism, and human perception as interconnected threads in the same fabric. We are only now, with our fragmented sciences, beginning to piece that fabric back together and hear its faint, enduring hum. Water is the hidden conductor in the symphony of Earth's energy. While we have focused on stone and magnetism, this vital element completes the circuit, acting as a living wire within the planet's crust. To understand the full picture of geomantic placement, we must follow the flow of water, seeing it not merely as a resource for survival, but as a dynamic participant in generating the very forces ancient cultures sought to harness. This brings us to a fascinating geophysical principle known as electrokinetics. When water, especially mineral-rich water, flows through porous rock or soil, the friction between the water molecules and the geological material can generate a measurable electrical potential. This is the streaming potential, a subtle but persistent electrical field created by the Earth's own hydrological pulse. Where you have moving groundwater, you often have a corresponding, localized electromagnetic anomaly. This transforms our view of underground aquifers. They are not just passive reservoirs, they are active components in the planet's energetic circulatory system, their flow creating a whisper of current that interacts with the broader magnetic field. Ancient builders, through long observation of the landscape, may have learned to identify these energized zones. A spring bubbling from the ground is not just a source of drinkable water, it is a point where this internal energy breaches the surface. A confluence of two rivers creates a mixing of different mineral loads and flow dynamics, potentially amplifying this effect. Building a sacred site at such a location was a way to tap directly into this terrestrial vitality. The evidence for this is written into the geography of countless revered places. Take Chalice Well in Glastonbury, England, a site shrouded in Arthurian legend. Its iron-rich waters, tinting the stone a deep red, have flowed for millennia. The well sits at the base of the Tor, a landscape noted for its unusual magnetic readings. Here, water, mineral content, and telluric energy converge, making it a classic example of a natural power spot recognized and sanctified across ages. On a vastly different scale, the Great Pyramid of Giza sits not on barren bedrock, but atop a layer of moist limestone and a deeper, saturated water table. Some hydrological surveys suggest the pyramid's location aligns with a unique interface between the Nile aquifer and deeper fossil water, a geological junction that could contribute to the site's distinctive electromagnetic profile. Far to the east, the magnificent temple complex of Angkor in Cambodia is inseparable from water. Its vast network of canals, reservoirs, and moats was a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, ensuring the city's sustenance. But could this water system have served a dual purpose? The precise orientation and placement of temples like Angkor Wat within this aquatic landscape may have been designed to channel and balance the flow of terrestrial energy, using water as a conductive medium to connect structures across the entire sacred geography. A particularly intriguing case emerges on the remote expanse of Easter Island. The iconic moai, those colossal stone faces, stand guard along the coastline. Conventional wisdom states they were ceremonial platforms for ancestor worship. However, researchers like archaeologist Carl Lipo have put forward a compelling theory linked to the island's most precious resource, fresh water. Their studies show that the moai are not randomly placed. They are positioned at precise points where freshwater seeps from the ground, creating coastal springs. The porous volcanic rock of the island acts like a sponge, with rainwater forming underground lenses that seep out at the shore. The platforms, or ahu, upon which the moai sit may have been sophisticated community centers built directly over these vital freshwater sources. This placement is profoundly practical, marking and protecting the water supply, but it also invites a geomagnetic consideration. The interface between fresh groundwater and saltwater, along with the mineral content of the volcanic rock, can create strong local electrical and magnetic gradients. By erecting their monumental statues at these energetic and resource-rich nodes, the Rapa Nui people may have been physically anchoring their ancestors' presence to the very life force of the island, both literally and symbolically. This perspective asks us to re-evaluate every sacred spring, holy well, and temple moat. Was the water feature added for ritual purification alone, or was it an integral part of the site's function as an energy system? The water likely served multiple roles: sustenance, symbolism, and as a conductive element that amplified or focused the subtle currents of the earth. When we see the monumental effort to move water, as at Angkor or in the raised fields of the Maya, we are witnessing more than agricultural genius. We are seeing the manipulation of the planet's most fundamental conductor, an attempt to engineer the flow of vitality itself across the landscape. This level of environmental orchestration implies a staggering depth of understanding, one that leads us to the ultimate expression of this lost science, the manipulation of the very materials of the Earth on a molecular level. The final frontier of this lost science may be its most audacious application, not just aligning stones but making them weightless. The question haunts every visitor to Sacsayhuaman or Baalbek: how did human hands move blocks weighing hundreds of tons? The conventional answers, involving ramps, ropes, and immense labor, are logical, yet they often feel incomplete when confronted with the sheer scale and precision of the work. This leads to a speculative but captivating possibility. What if the builders had mastered a method to temporarily reduce friction or gravity itself, using principles of sound and magnetism? Legends from around the world whisper of such techniques. In Welsh folklore, the great standing stone Mean Lear was said to walk down to the river at night to drink. In accounts of the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek, home to the 1,000-ton megaliths known as the Trilithon, Arab histories speak of jinn or giants commanded by King Solomon. More intriguingly, some traditions describe stones being moved by the sound of a trumpet, or by touching them with a special rod that made them light. To a modern ear, these are fairy tales, but to a researcher asking what physical phenomenon might be described as a commanding sound or a rod that removes weight, they become potential clues. The rod could be a metaphor for a focused energy tool, perhaps using magnetic fields. The trumpet sound points directly to vibration and acoustics. This is where fringe physics meets ancient mystery. Consider the property of diamagnetism. All materials exhibit a weak repulsion to a magnetic field. Under an immensely powerful field, this repulsion can, in theory, levitate objects, even non-metallic ones like water or organic matter. Now combine this with piezoelectricity, the ability of certain stones like quartz to generate electricity under pressure or vibration. A theoretical model emerges where a massive stone rich in piezoelectric crystals is subjected to precise, resonant sound waves. The vibrations stress the crystals, generating a localized electromagnetic field around the stone. If this field is properly tuned and combined with an external magnetic field from the Earth or placed magnets, could it create a temporary condition of reduced effective weight? The stone wouldn't float, but it might slide across a lubricated surface with the ease of moving a much smaller object. This idea finds a perplexing modern echo in Coral Castle, Florida. In the early 20th century, a single man named Edward Leedskalnin, who stood just 5 feet tall and weighed 100 pounds, single-handedly quarried, carved, and erected over 1,000 tons of coral rock. He claimed to know the secrets of the pyramids and said he understood how the Egyptians levitated stones. He worked alone at night, and when asked how he moved the colossal blocks, he would only reply that he understood the laws of weight and leverage. Witnesses reported hearing him sing to the stones. While his methods remain unsolved, the scale of his accomplishment forces us to question the absolute limits of pre-industrial technology. At Sacsayhuamon, the andesite stones are not merely stacked, they are fused together in a puzzle of interlocking angles, with some blocks weighing over 100 tons and hauled from quarries miles away. At Baalbek, the trilithon stones are so immense that modern cranes struggle to lift comparable weights. The logistical challenge is staggering, even with unlimited labor. So we must ask, were these projects solely monuments to human sweat and suffering, or could they also be monuments to a forgotten physics? The legends of walking stones and magical rods suggest our ancestors may have witnessed something that defied their and our everyday understanding of weight and force. Perhaps the true purpose of aligning a temple to the Earth's magnetic pulse was not just to sanctify it, but to activate it, to place it within a global network of energy that could, when needed, be tapped to perform the impossible. The methods of construction become the ultimate expression of the science, a final, physical proof that they were not just building on the land, but conducting its deepest song. The sky and the earth were not separate realms, but partners in a constant, silent conversation. For the ancient architects, the most profound moments likely occurred when these two systems spoke in unison, when the predictable dance of the heavens met the subtle pulse of the ground. This is the Astronomical-Magnetic Nexus, the idea that celestial events and terrestrial energy were part of a single, integrated science. Researchers like Alexander Thom, who meticulously surveyed hundreds of megalithic sites across Britain, demonstrated that many were aligned with astonishing precision to solar, lunar, and stellar events. But what if those alignments served a dual purpose, marking not just a moment in the sky, but a moment of heightened activity within the Earth itself? Modern science gives us clues about how this might work. Our planet's magnetic field is not a static shield. It is a dynamic entity constantly buffeted by the solar wind, a stream of charged particles from the sun. During periods of intense solar activity, like flares or coronal mass ejections, this wind can compress and excite the magnetosphere, inducing electrical currents in the ground. Similarly, the gravitational pull of the moon, which drives the tides in our oceans, also exerts a minuscule but measurable influence on the solid Earth and its fluid outer core, potentially modulating the very dynamo that generates our magnetic field. The hypothesis is elegant. Certain powerful astronomical alignments, like a solstice sunrise or a major lunar standstill, might coincide with predictable, subtle shifts in local geomagnetic conditions. A temple aligned to both systems would then become active, its stones humming with a different energy on those specific days, transforming a calendar date into a tangible sensory experience. We can see this potential duality etched into the landscape. At Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, the sun dagger petroglyph on Fajoda Butte is a famous celestial calendar. A sliver of sunlight pierces through rock slabs to bisect a carved spiral precisely at the summer solstice and mark the equinoxes with dagger-like shadows. Yet the canyon itself is a geological wonder, with complex layers of sandstone and subsurface structures that could influence local magnetic fields. The astronomical marker is undeniable, but was it placed on that specific butte because the rock itself resonated differently when the solstice light touched it? Across the Pacific, the Hamonga a Maui trilithon in Tonga stands as a massive coral archway. Oral tradition and modern measurements confirm its lintel is aligned to the rising and setting points of the sun at the solstices. For the Polynesians, master navigators of the vast ocean, astronomy was a practical science for wayfinding, but their navigation also involved a deep, intuitive reading of sea currents, bird paths, and wave patterns, a holistic environmental awareness. Could the trilithon's alignment have also served as a terrestrial marker, a fixed point of reference that harmonized celestial cycles with the magnetic field of the land, grounding their star-based knowledge in the very soil of their homeland? This integrated view challenges our modern fragmentation of knowledge. We have separate disciplines, astronomy for the cosmos and geophysics for the earth. But to the ancient mind, these were likely chapters in the same book. Their sacred calendar was not merely a tally of days, it was a map of Earth's energetic seasons, predicting not just when to plant crops, but perhaps when the veil between worlds was thinnest, or when the stones themselves were most receptive to intention. If they built their temples to capture these convergent moments, then we are not looking at silent ruins, but at sophisticated instruments designed to measure a harmony we have only just begun to hear. The most compelling evidence may be the one you feel in your own body. Beyond the magnetometers and the astronomical charts, a persistent thread connects modern visitors to ancient sites, a shared, subjective experience that something here is profoundly different. This is the psychological dimension of alignment, the question of whether these places can still affect human consciousness today, not through belief but through subtle environmental physics. The reports are remarkably consistent across cultures and continents. People describe a palpable sense of energy, a tingling in the hands, a sudden emotional release, or an overwhelming feeling of peace. Others note unexplained temperature drops, cameras or phones malfunctioning without cause, and a disorienting sense of time distortion where minutes feel like hours. In places like Sedona, Arizona, these sensations are so commonly reported at specific sandstone formations that the locations have been mapped as energy vortices for decades by intuitive visitors. While skeptics rightly attribute much of this to the power of suggestion or the awe of monumental architecture, a growing body of interdisciplinary research suggests there might be a physical trigger beneath the psychology. Psychologists studying the emotion of awe note that it often arises in environments of vast scale and beauty, leading to feelings of connectedness and a diminished sense of self, a state not unlike some spiritual experiences. But what if the environment is also broadcasting a subtle, physical signal? Neurological research, particularly the work of scientists like Michael Persinger, provides a fascinating clue. In controlled laboratory settings, applying specific, complex, weak magnetic fields to the temporal lobes of the brain can induce sensations often reported at sacred sites, feelings of a sensed presence, of being watched, or of profound meaningfulness. The mechanism is theorized to involve the tiny crystals of biogenic magnetite found within the human brain. Just as a compass needle aligns to the Earth's field, these microscopic internal magnets could make our neural circuitry subtly sensitive to unusual geomagnetic conditions. In a location with a complex, localized magnetic anomaly, the brain might receive a faint, unfamiliar signal, which it then interprets through the lens of our consciousness, potentially producing feelings of dizziness, expanded awareness, or unease. Consider an illustrative experiment conducted at a well-known stone circle. Participants are blindfolded and led, one by one, into different sections of the site from the center to the outer stones. They are asked to report any physical or emotional sensations. Meanwhile, researchers quietly map the magnetic field with precise instruments. In several documented cases, the spots where individuals report the strongest subjective effects, such as a pressure in the chest or a wave of calm, correspond directly to locations of measurable magnetic disturbance. The individuals had no prior knowledge of the site's layout or the geophysical data. This doesn't prove causality, but it establishes a compelling correlation, suggesting our biology might be registering something our modern minds have forgotten how to name. The King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid offers a powerful case study. Many visitors, from early explorers to modern tourists, describe intense and often contradictory experiences within its confined granite space. Some report claustrophobia and a desperate urge to leave, while others describe a deep, trance-like serenity or vivid, waking visions. The chamber's construction is unique, built from massive granite blocks laden with quartz crystals, sitting within a structure positioned on a magnetic anomaly. It is, in essence, a shielded room designed with specific resonant properties. Whether by ancient intent or geological coincidence, it creates an environment that appears to amplify individual psychological states, perhaps by interacting with our own internal magnetic sense. So, when you recall a moment at an old stone wall or a quiet forest grove where the air itself seemed charged, what were you truly sensing? Was it just imagination or a fleeting connection to an older way of knowing, a language of place spoken not in words but in whispers to the blood and bone? This subjective evidence completes the circle, reminding us that the lost science was not just about moving stone, but about moving the human spirit. The most profound evidence often lies not in what we can see, but in what we can simulate. We now possess a tool that allows us to peer through time, to rewind the invisible compass needle and see the world as the builders saw it. This is the digital reconstruction of Earth's ancient magnetic fields, a marriage of supercomputing power and archaeological data that is revolutionizing our investigation. Scientists use sophisticated global geomagnetic models, like the International Geomagnetic Reference Field, as a starting point. These models are based on our understanding of the planet's fluid core dynamics. But to look backward, they must be fed data from time capsules locked in clay and stone. When an ancient potter fired a vessel, or when a community lit a hearth, the intense heat reset the magnetic minerals within that clay. As the material cooled, those tiny particles aligned themselves with the precise direction and strength of the Earth's magnetic field at that exact moment. Archaeologists can sample these artifacts, carefully extracting a core, and measure that frozen magnetic snapshot in a laboratory device called a magnetometer. Each sample is a single data point, a whisper from the past. By collecting thousands of these whispers from across the globe and across millennia, researchers can refine the models, creating increasingly accurate maps of how the magnetic poles have wandered over centuries. The process for testing an alignment hypothesis is both elegant and powerful. A researcher inputs the precise geographic coordinates of a monument, along with its best estimated construction date. The paleomagnetic model then calculates two key values for that specific location and moment in deep time. The first is historical magnetic declination, the angle between true north and where the compass needle would have pointed. The second is inclination, the dip of that needle into the earth. With these numbers, we can draw a virtual line across the ancient landscape, the exact bearing of magnetic north as it existed when the first foundation stone was laid. We can then compare this digital bearing to the monument's actual physical orientation. This allows for a quantitative, rather than speculative, assessment of geomagnetic intent. Consider a digital reconstruction of the Avebury complex in England, around 2,500 years before the Common Era. This vast, sprawling site of stone circles, avenues, and a massive enclosing bank and ditch has long puzzled researchers with its complex, non-solar alignments. Using modeling software, we could overlay a map of the site with the calculated position of magnetic north for that period. Do the central axis of the circles, or the direction of the mysterious West Kennet Avenue, align with this historical magnetic bearing? The software provides a clear, testable line of inquiry, moving the question from the realm of intriguing possibility into the domain of measurable data. This approach is not without its limitations. The further back in time we go, the sparser the archaeological data becomes, making the models less certain. A monument's construction might have spanned generations, during which the pole continued its slow drift, and we must always remember that a correlation, even a precise one, does not automatically prove causation. Yet the potential is breathtaking. For the first time, we can systematically survey the ancient world not with a shovel, but with a simulation, testing alignment hypotheses across continents and cultures with a consistency never before possible. There is a profound irony in using our most advanced technology, born from a worldview that sees the universe as a mechanistic system, to attempt to understand a science that viewed the cosmos as a living, interconnected being. We are using the language of mathematics to decode a poetry written in stone. This digital bridge to the past offers a rigorous future path, one where every ancient wall, every standing stone, can become a data point in a grand experiment to see if our ancestors were, in fact, listening to a silent song we are only now learning to hear with silicon ears. Every new discovery about these ancient sites carries a profound responsibility. The growing fascination with geomagnetic alignment and sacred geometry presents a modern dilemma, a delicate balance between the relentless drive to investigate and the urgent need to preserve. How do we respectfully study a place that may be a scientific wonder, a cultural treasure, and a living spiritual sanctuary all at once? This is not merely an academic question. It is an ethical imperative that defines the future of this entire field of inquiry. The core challenge is navigating the intersection of three equally valid claims: the scientific pursuit of knowledge, the cultural heritage rights of descendant communities, and the intangible spiritual value these sites hold for millions. Ignoring any one of these creates harm. To proceed ethically, modern research must adopt a framework of humility and collaboration. This means listening first. Indigenous elders and traditional knowledge keepers often hold oral histories and understandings of a site's purpose that are absent from archaeological textbooks. Their perspective is not an obstacle to science, but a crucial layer of context. Organizations like UNESCO establish protocols for World Heritage Sites that emphasize preservation of both the physical structure and its cultural meaning, recognizing that a monument's value is inseparable from the living traditions that surround it. Forward-thinking archaeologists now prioritize non-invasive techniques that leave no trace. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry allow us to map underground features without ever breaking the soil. Drone surveys create detailed three-dimensional models from the air. These tools satisfy scientific curiosity while honoring the principle of minimal disturbance, treating the site as a fragile document to be scanned, not a puzzle to be dismantled. Best practices extend beyond technology to human impact. This includes strictly limiting visitor numbers to prevent erosion, designing walkways that protect sensitive areas, and most importantly, involving local and descendant communities in research design from the very beginning. They must be partners, not subjects, helping to determine what questions are asked and how findings are shared. The potential harms of ignoring this framework are real and damaging. Well-intentioned but uninformed practices, like energetic dowsing that involves driving rods into the ground, can physically disturb archaeological layers and sacred soil. The rise of what some call crystal and conspiracy tourism can lead to vandalism, as visitors chip off pieces of stone as souvenirs or attempt unauthorized rituals, eroding the very fabric of the monument. There is also a subtle harm in the appropriation of sacred knowledge, stripping cultural and spiritual context from a site to fit a generic narrative of ancient mysteries, thereby silencing the voices of those for whom the place remains profoundly meaningful. The ongoing tensions at places like Uluru in Australia illustrate this balance vividly. For the Anangu people, the massive sandstone monolith is a living cultural landscape imbued with creation stories and lore. For decades, tourists climbed it against the wishes of the traditional owners, causing environmental damage and profound cultural offense. After a long campaign, the climb was permanently closed in 2019, a decision that prioritized cultural respect and preservation over unrestricted access. Similarly, at Machu Picchu in Peru, authorities constantly grapple with the effects of overwhelming tourist numbers on the site's structural integrity and spiritual atmosphere, implementing timed tickets and mandatory guides to manage the flow. These cases force a reflective question. As someone drawn to these mysteries, what is your role? Are you a passive consumer, an advocate for preservation, or a respectful guest? Responsible stewardship asks each of us to consider our impact. It means choosing to support ethical tour operators, following all guidelines when visiting, and seeking out information that includes indigenous perspectives. It means understanding that some knowledge may be meant to remain with its traditional keepers, and that not every secret is ours to uncover. The ultimate goal is not to solve every mystery, but to ensure these silent, sentinel places remain intact and respected, so that future generations with ever better tools and perhaps wiser hearts can continue the conversation with the past. This careful, conscious approach is the only way the true legacy of these sites, both their stone and their soul, will endure. The principles that guided ancient builders on Earth may not be confined to our blue marble alone. As we stand on the cusp of becoming an interplanetary species, the questions of alignment and energy take on a cosmic dimension, merging with the emerging field of space archaeology and the science of comparative planetology. This is the future frontier, where the lost science of listening to a planet's pulse could transform from a historical mystery into a practical toolkit for survival and discovery beyond our world. Space archaeology, pioneered by researchers like Alice Gorman, applies archaeological methods to human artifacts in space, from discarded satellites to footprints on the lunar surface. It is a discipline that thinks in deep time, even off-world, but its tools and perspectives could be turned outward, scanning the landscapes of other worlds not just for signs of human activity, but for any potential signs of past intelligence. Here, our understanding of Earth's magnetic alignments provides a provocative search image. If a civilization anywhere develops a sophisticated relationship with its home planet, might it also seek to harmonize its structures with that world's dominant energy field, its magnetosphere? This idea of a universal sacred geometry is not about specific shapes, but about a fundamental principle, building in resonance with the planetary environment. Mars presents the first real test bed for these speculative ideas. Orbital probes have mapped the red planet's crustal magnetic anomalies, remnants of a global field that collapsed billions of years ago. These localized, fossilized magnetic fields create a patchy, invisible landscape of force. For future human colonists, understanding this magnetic terrain could be critical. One futuristic application is practical radiation shielding. Aligning a habitat's most vulnerable sections, or its sleeping quarters, with the strongest local magnetic remnants could provide a passive, supplemental layer of protection against cosmic rays, using the planet's own ancient shield. Beyond physics, there is the psychological dimension. On a barren, alien world, could designing living spaces that are consciously aligned with measurable planetary features, however subtle, provide a sense of connection and psychological stability, echoing the ancient human impulse to find our place within a larger order. These questions move from practical planning to the ultimate detective story, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence or its artifacts. The controversial region of Cydonia on Mars, with its famous face and surrounding formations, serves as a thought experiment. While mainstream science conclusively attributes these features to natural erosion and pareidolia, the public fascination they sparked led independent researchers to analyze their geometry and potential alignments. This exercise, however disputed, highlights a methodological point. If we were to ever encounter a true alien megastructure, what would we look for? Beyond obvious signs of engineering, we might analyze its orientation. Does it align with its planet's rotational axis, its remaining magnetic fields, or a significant local geological feature? A structure built in deliberate disregard of its planet's natural energies might suggest one kind of intelligence, perhaps a conqueror species. But a structure that integrates with them, that seems to draw purpose from the landscape, would suggest something profoundly different. A culture that, like our ancient ancestors, saw itself as part of a conscious cosmos. This expansive view brings our long journey full circle. We began by looking down at stones rooted in earth, sensing a forgotten conversation. We end by looking up at the stars, wondering if that same conversation might be a universal language, a common step in the development of any intelligent species that learns to listen to its home world. The lost science, therefore, may not be a relic. It could be a prototype, a first draft of a planetary philosophy that we will need to rewrite for Mars and someday for worlds beyond. It challenges us to see our ancient monuments not as endpoints, but as starting points, the first human attempts to code a dialogue with a living planet into permanent form. That dialogue, it seems, is just beginning. The stones of our ancestors are a powerful echo, but the real conversation begins where you stand right now. This exploration of lost sciences and planetary harmonies isn't merely a historical curiosity. It's an invitation to a different kind of awareness in your own life, a personal tuning into the subtle frequencies of your immediate environment. You don't need a magnetometer to start, just your own senses and a bit of curiosity. The first step is simple observation, a quiet form of listening to the place you call home. Notice where your pets choose to sleep or rest. Animals, from cats to cattle, often demonstrate a sensitivity to electromagnetic fields and geological stress lines, gravitating toward or avoiding specific spots with uncanny consistency. Watch the patterns in your garden, where certain plants thrive with unusual vigor or persistently struggle despite your best care, hinting at variations in soil composition, water flow, and perhaps even subtle energies beneath the surface. Walk slowly through your rooms or a local park and simply feel. Are there areas that feel naturally still and calming, while others seem subtly charged or draining? This isn't mystical thinking, it's the beginning of environmental literacy, relearning a language of place we've largely forgotten. You can deepen this practice with a few accessible tools. A simple compass is a gateway. Check the orientation of your home, your bed, your desk. Does your workspace face a particular cardinal direction? And how does the light and energy of that orientation affect your focus throughout the day? Exploring the basic principles of Feng Shui isn't about strict rules, but about understanding the flow of energy, or Kai, through your living spaces. It encourages you to consider the arrangement of furniture to avoid blocked pathways, to position your rest area for maximum tranquility, and to create balance. Try meditating or simply sitting in silence in different natural settings. A sunlit meadow, the shade of an old tree near a stream. Note the subjective differences in your mind and body. Does one location promote deeper calm while another sparks creativity? These are personal experiments in alignment, connecting your internal state to external geography. Consider a practical application like rearranging a home office. Start by identifying the cardinal north in the room. Perhaps you shift your desk so you are not sitting with your back directly to the door, a classic feng shui principle for reducing subconscious unease. You might position your chair to face a supportive direction, like the east for new beginnings or the north for career focus, depending on the tradition you explore. Then address the modern equivalent of geomagnetic clutter, the chaotic electromagnetic soup from our devices. Create a dedicated charging station away from your sleeping or working area. Turn off wireless routers at night, and introduce plants known for improving air quality and subtly altering the room's energy. The goal isn't to achieve perfection, but to intentionally create a space that feels more harmonious and supportive, a micro-scale version of aligning a temple to its environment. Now extend your gaze beyond your walls. Take a walk and map your local landscape with new eyes. Are there old, prominent stones or unusual rock formations in your area? Is there a natural spring, a well-known hilltop, or an ancient tree that feels significant? Often, local folklore or old place names hold clues, a hill called Lookout or a creek named Whispering Waters. These features might have been landmarks or gathering places for earlier inhabitants who sensed something distinctive about that location. By seeking them out and spending quiet time there, you connect to a continuity of place, wondering if you, too, are sensing the reasons that spot was chosen long ago. This practice transforms a simple walk into a form of respectful archaeology of feeling. This personal attunement is how the essence of the lost science stays alive. It moves from being a secret locked in stone to a living awareness practiced in daily life. It's the decision to notice, to feel, and to intentionally shape your small corner of the world in harmony with the larger patterns around you. When you do this, you are no longer just studying ancient monuments. You are participating in the same fundamental human impulse to find your place within the living conversation of the earth. The final mystery, then, is not what they knew, but what we might begin to remember. This journey through time and stone leaves us with a quiet, resonant truth. We have traced a path from the silent, imposing monuments of antiquity to the glowing simulations of supercomputers, all in pursuit of a single, haunting idea: the lost science of aligning structures with Earth's magnetic fields. Along the way, we examined tangible evidence, from magnetized Olmec artifacts to the precise skew of ancient walls that only makes sense when you account for a wandering magnetic pole. We grappled with the spectrum of purpose, from the pragmatic needs of navigation and stability to the profound possibilities of sacred technology designed to alter consciousness itself. The overarching theme that emerges is deeply humbling. It suggests our ancestors may have perceived and interacted with the natural world in a way that was fundamentally integrated, where astronomy, geology, spirituality, and architecture were not separate subjects, but different expressions of a single living reality. Our modern sciences, for all their power, often work in isolation, studying the stars in one department and the soil in another. The ancient approach seems to have been holistic, seeking the connections between them, listening for the harmony between the pulse of the planet and the cycles of the sky. Whether this was a precise, repeatable technological discipline or a profound intuitive art passed down through generations, its legacy challenges us at our core. It asks us to reconsider the earth beneath our feet. It is not merely a platform for our cities, a resource for our consumption, or a passive backdrop to human drama. This perspective suggests it can be an active participant, a source of subtle energy and information, a partner in a dialogue we have largely forgotten how to hear. The researcher John Anthony West once reflected that we are not inheritors of a static past, but heirs to a dynamic mystery. Those words ring especially true here. The stones do not give up their secrets easily. They provoke more questions than they answer, and that is their greatest gift. They pull us out of our assumptions and invite us to look at the world with fresh eyes, to wonder not just about how they were built, but why they were built there in that specific way at that exact angle. So let this exploration be an open invitation not to accept any single theory blindly, but to cultivate a more observant and questioning mind, to look at the old church built on the ancient hill, the local spring wrapped in legend, or even the layout of your own living space with a new curiosity. What subtle alignments, what forgotten conversations with the landscape might you begin to notice in your own world? The search for this lost science is ultimately a search for a different relationship with our planet, one of resonance rather than dominance. It is a story still being written with every new geophysical survey, every thoughtful analysis of myth, and every moment of quiet attention we pay to the places that feel inexplicably significant. Your perspective is a part of that story now. What did this journey bring up for you? Do you have a local site that seems to hold a mysterious presence, or an experience that defies easy explanation? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. If this deep dive into the intersection of history, mystery, and hidden forces resonated with you, consider subscribing for more explorations into the world's greatest enduring puzzles. The past is not a closed book, it is an open conversation, and your curiosity is the next